out of all the network kids blocks that spawned during the mid to late 90s, there were few that defined a generation more than Kids WB, and without good reason. From its inception in 1995, it housed a lot of shows one couldn't get from the other big networks, and over the next several years, it would morph into the biggest must-see Saturday morning block of the early to mid-2000s. However, in early 1999, the block really picked up momentum when they acquired the rights to a little-known show from syndication. That show was Pokémon, and it changed everything. Both the show and the block went on to enjoy an incredible amount of success and popularity. But then, in 2006, after 7 successful seasons, Pokémon was cancelled from the block. So, what exactly happened that led up to this decision? I mean, after all the success the anime brought to the block, why would they just cancel it like that? Well, we're going to find out. I'm the MediaNutso, and it's high time we take a look back at Pokémon's time on Kids WB. If you guys enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like and a comment down below, and if you want to be alerted to new uploads, be sure to hit that notification bell. Also, if you want to help support my work, head to my Patreon and make a pledge. For just $3 a month, you'll have early access to my newest videos and other cool perks. And now, on with the video! The anime first made its premiere in Japan on TV Tokyo on April 1st, 1997, and was immediately a, no pun intended, monster hit. So naturally, plans were made to bring the series over to the United States. They opted to get a then relatively small unknown company, 4Kids Productions, to dub and localize the series. Although Pokémon would go on to carve itself a home on Kids WB, what few remember is that the anime first got started in first-run syndication. Now, for those unaware of how it worked, basically, instead of airing on one network, the show was licensed out to and aired on various independent television stations across the US. In this case, it aired on various WB, Fox, and UPN stations, and depending on where you lived, it would come on at different times, usually either early in the morning or during the afternoon.
Pokémon! Weekdays at 6:30 on Crew 62.
Pokémon, weekday mornings at 6:30 on Fox 43.
But even with the varying time slots, plus being backed by an aggressive marketing campaign, when the adventure officially set off on September 8th, 1998, it proved to be quite an engaging one, as it quickly became a massive hit, a rare feat for any anime airing in America at the time. It would run in syndication for the first 40 episodes, but would then stop on October 30th with the episode March of the Executor Squad. The reason was because, at the time, Kids WB had won the bid to acquire the rights to the show and was preparing to bring it over to their block. However, before they could, they had to wait for the station's licenses with the show to expire. But for the time being, they continued to rerun the show. When Pokémon eventually made its debut on Kids WB 4 months later on February 13th, 1999, to say it was a big hit would be a huge understatement.
Hurry! It's spreading!
Squirtle, Squirtle.
Bulbasaur!
Pikachu! This is the 20th case of Pokemon fever this week!
It's unstoppable!
It was gigantic. In its first week on the block, it pulled in a 3.9 rating and 15 share. By September of that year, it was averaging 1.6 million viewers, and at one point it attracted 3.1 million, making it the largest audience in Kids WB's history. It did so well, it helped make Kids WB the top-rated kids block and a must-watch one, and along with Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, helped push anime into the mainstream. Of course, their success would not go unnoticed. Fox Kids responded by acquiring other anime that were similar to Pokémon. There was of course Digimon, which did become a big success for that block, and there was also Monster Ranchers, Flint the Time Detective, and Metabots, which all yielded mixed results. The anime would also get parodied on several notable shows, which really should tell you just how big it made it. Anywho, getting back on track, the anime was so big it held the #1 spot on Saturday morning for 54 straight weeks. But this wouldn't last forever. As I previously mentioned in my One Saturday Morning video, in May of 2000, Pokémon was unseated from the #1 spot by Disney's The Weekenders. This was such a big deal that TV Guide dubbed The Weekenders the show that killed Pokémon. However, this victory was short-lived and the anime shortly reclaimed the top spot. The anime's popularity also led to Warner Bros. Releasing the first 3 Pokémon movies to theaters, which weren't exactly critical darlings, but did well with fans, though to diminishing returns. Now, as much as Pokémon brought a lot of success to Kids WB, it was also a double-edged sword. What exactly do I mean, you may ask? Well, Pokémon's success came at the expense of Warner Bros.' other shows. See, for the Kids WB executives, Pokémon set a specific precedent for them. More low-cost shows that could turn in gangbuster ratings. All of a sudden, many of their own shows were getting the short end of the stick. Like Batman Beyond was promised a 3rd season early on, but didn't end up materializing. Static Shock got the boot after season 3 despite bringing in consistently good ratings, and the Zeta Project and the Nightmare Room were given the boot after 2 and 1 season respectively. That being said though, this isn't to say every show got treated like this, nor did any good come out of it. It did bring us Card Captors, Yu-Gi-Oh!, which became another massive hit for the block, Astro Boy, and Mega Man NT Warrior. Plus, Warner Bros. Animation did get more big hits of their own on the block, including Shaolin Showdown, Mucha Lucha, What's New Scooby-Doo, and Teen Titans. So yeah, Pokémon's popularity brought a lot of good and bad to the block, but the same can be said for any big show on any block or network, and it's not hard to see why they did it. Anywho, 2001 was a year of big changes for the show. At this point in time, the original Pokémania phenomenon came to an end. Just to be clear, the show and the franchise as a whole wasn't suddenly dying. It's just it was no longer the hot commodity people were talking about. Sales and profits were down across the board, and there were other big shows and movies like Yu-Gi-Oh! As I already mentioned, Star Wars, and SpongeBob that began to take much of their shares both in ratings and merchandise sales. So suffice to say, Pokémon was starting to be seen as a passing fad for many. However, not being the hot item anymore doesn't mean the show was suddenly not popular anymore. In fact, from 2001 to 2005, it continued to perform well, ranking at the top of the Saturday morning ratings for a good while and maintaining a loyal fanbase from there on out. Also, even if over time the ratings thinned out and weren't as big as they were back in 1999 and 2000, it would still consistently rank in the top 10 broadcasts. But every once in a blue moon, they would score some big victories. Good example, 2005 saw the premiere broadcast of Destiny Deoxys, which went on to deliver the best ratings Kids WB had seen since 2003, showing that Pokémon still had plenty of power and strength to soldier on. Well, we've now reached the point you've all been waiting for, the moment we answer the big question. Why did Kids WB cancel Pokémon from the block? Well, it wasn't just one factor, but several. To understand what exactly happened, we have to talk about the events that led up to the decision, namely the dub's recasting and the block's move to another network. By late 2005, despite the show continuing to do well in the ratings, the popularity was no longer translating into big money. Granted, profits had been on the decline for some time, but still. So, in October of 2005, 4Kids decided to sell their 3% stake of the franchise to Nintendo, Creatures Inc., and Game Freak for $960,000. Which was no big loss on their end, as they had already made $140 million off of the franchise. Then, 2 months later, on December 31st, 4Kids and Pokémon USA announced they were not going to renew their license agreement, and that beginning in 2006, Pokémon USA would handle the licensing through their in-house group. But 4Kids would continue to receive commissions on the payments made under their agreement, albeit in shrinking increments, over the next few years. Following afterwards, Pokémon USA started looking for a different company that could produce the dub at a lower cost. 4Kids put out their bid for the job, probably only doing so out of obligation, and was ultimately outbid by Taj Productions. Taj had previously worked with 4Kids on producing the dub in the past, being where 4Kids recorded the show before they switched over to their in-house studio for the remainder of their run. So, once Advanced Battle was almost finished, it was learned that Pokémon USA was moving production of the English dub in-house going forward, and as part of an effort to lower production costs, they would hire a completely new voice cast to do the characters, who were selected based on who did the best imitation of each of the characters' distinct voices. Although some cast members did jump over, like James Cathcart, Casey Rogers, and Lisa Orditz, and they brought back Roger Parsons as the narrator. To give the cast a trial run, Pokémon USA commissioned an hour-long special that also served to commemorate the franchise's 10th anniversary, The Mastermind of Mirage Pokémon, which only took them 3 weeks to dub the whole special. Needless to say, when the news broke that the change was happening, and when the special aired on April 29, 2006, many fans absolutely hated it, mainly for the cast performances, although there were a few that gave the special a fair chance. The fan backlash was so big, many started a fan movement called Save Our Voice Actors in an attempt to reinstate the original cast, which really didn't end up happening. But just because they continued forward with the change doesn't mean they didn't listen to the feedback. In fact, 2 big changes did come out of it. The original actor to take over as Ash, Casey Rogers, who was also doing Max, was switched to then newcomer Sarah Nanochenny, and they later went back and redubbed the whole special and released it on DVD as a part of the 2-disc release of Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. Now, before we continue, we should address one question that's lingered ever since the recast happened. Why didn't Pokémon USA just simply bring the original cast on board? Well, the official reason given is, in addition to lowering costs, it was because they were contractually tied with 4Kids, and thus weren't allowed on any productions outside of the company. While there is some truth to it, that wasn't exactly the case. According to some of the voice actors, their contracts didn't have any sort of non-compete exclusivity clauses or any other unimpeachable terms. Therefore, they could have just easily brought them on board no problem. So why didn't they? Well, there is another reason. Now, full disclosure, what I'm about to say next is purely an educated guess based around all of the information that I presented. So if I turn out to be wrong, I sincerely apologize in advance. Anyways, Pokémon USA made this decision not just to save on money, but also on time. What do I mean specifically? You see, when they assumed production, they had one long-term plan for the dub going forward, not have it lag too far behind the original Japanese airings, so they wanted to get going on the next season as soon as possible. Ergo, if they had decided to bring the original cast on board, they would have had to negotiate new deals with them, which they just wouldn't have had the proper amount of time to do that and have production going full swing at once. Thus, for them, it was simpler and easier to just switch to a different cast. There were no personal vendettas or grudges against the original voice actors. It was just to both raise the dub's profitability and ensure its longevity in the United States. Alright, back onto the main story. On Kids WB's end, they were about to go through their own round of changes. Around the same time in January, the weekday block had been cancelled in favor of more adult programming, and not long after, it was announced that both the WB and UPN networks, amidst struggling ratings and profitability, would be merged into one network, the CW, and that Kids WB was elected to continue on as its official Saturday morning block. This, coupled with steadily declining ratings and a renewed focus on bringing in more shows from Warner Bros. Animation, were more than enough for the executives to end the show's run, with the final new episode, fittingly enough, Pasta La Vista, airing on July 8, 2006, though it continued to play in reruns until it officially left the block on September 16th. Fortunately though, the show already found a new home on Cartoon Network, as they had been airing it in reruns for a few years, and would start airing the new season, Battle Frontier, 2 months later on September 8th, where it would go on to premiere the newer seasons for the next decade before the rights were picked up by Disney XD and then later Netflix, where it continues playing new episodes to this day. As for Kids WB, the block soldiered on for 2 more seasons, giving it the unique distinction of outliving the network it was originally made for, but it wasn't the same after Pokémon left and would officially come to an end on May 17, 2008. However, their impact left a lasting impression with those that first laid eyes on it that fateful day in 1999. To close things out, Pokémon's time on Kids WB was a very special and significant one. Sure, its success came at the expense of some of their other shows, but overall, it brought a lot of massive popularity to both the show and the block, helped give anime some significant mainstream attention, and made Kids WB into a fun and popular Saturday morning hotspot for several years. Even long after its final broadcast, many people today still remember all of the fun times they had watching the anime during its days on the block. I hope you guys had a great time watching and that it gave you a great insight into the anime's importance in Kids WB's history. Thank you.
Yourself, dig it in. WB yourself.